Hello and welcome to the Simon and Friends podcast, part of the Box Score Network. I am Simon Shortt. Joining me this week is Ben Parker. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing great. We got a lot to get to, man. Excited to be here.
We got a lot to get to, and I'm not even going to hold you up with any extra segments or anything like I normally like to spring on you because we want to make sure any extra time you have at the end of this podcast, you dedicate to going over or staying on our YouTube channel, checking out this week's mock draft. Extra special mock draft went up on Tuesday for Box Score Network. Ben, Austin, Peyton did a really fun, really cool concept broadcast style. So make sure you go check that out with any extra time that we save you. Because Ben, we'll zip through this like 45 minutes, right?
Oh yeah,
That's
right.
what you and I
Easy,
do.
easy.
Yeah. Ben and I are completing the NFL Draft War Room series. If you're listening on the Simon and Friends podcast, thank you so much for being here. If you're here on YouTube, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate these. Will be broken up into two videos that'll go up over the weekend, roughly. So if you're watching, we're starting with the AFC East. If you're watching the AFC East video, NFC East will be up within the next 24 hours. So thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe. Please like this video. Comment with any thoughts. We would love to talk to you about what you think these teams are going to do in the draft. But we're here in the final installment, Ben. So let's just get right down to it. Everyone knows what's happening right now. I am putting together the draft plan for the New England Patriots. I've been waiting for this one for weeks, so I cannot wait to give you my thoughts and hear what you have to say. So here we go. I'm coming in as the New England Patriots. We'll make me unnamed for now. Whoever you think's actually making the calls, putting the draft board together, whether it's Elliott Wolf, whether it's Mike Vrabel, I'll let you decide. We've cornered ourselves, Ben. We've cornered ourselves into drafting for need a number four overall. Or have I strategically set myself up to take the best value remaining at four overall? A franchise starting left tackle, even if he's not an all pro, might inherently be more valuable, even more valuable than a short term high end pass rusher. So this is assuming that Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter go 2-3 after Cam Ward goes first overall. And if they are, I'm taking Will Campbell at four overall. He can be my franchise left tackle. I truly believe that. The film says it. The 33-inch arm remeasure at LSU uh, leaves me with no concerns over the arm length situation. But let's say the arms are too short or just it doesn't work out at left tackle. I firmly believe he'll be a franchise level left guard for multiple contracts. Um, there's a conversation. Maybe you'll say something about this. There's a conversation about Will Campbell versus Armand Membu. But we signed Morgan Moses this offseason. He's going to play right tackle for us this year. Now, should you make long-term plans based on Morgan Moses? No. Even me, a staunch Morgan Moses believer and appreciator, can say that. But we saw what happened when you take a top 10 talent offensive tackle last year and needlessly put him on the other side of the ball. So that was J.C. Latham for the Titans, who was rough at left tackle. Now they spent $50 million on Dan Moore, so Latham can go back to the right side. So I'm not going to mess around. I do have Campbell as OT1, but I wouldn't have them graded all that differently. There's not that big of a gap between them. So I'm taking Will Campbell at four overall. I should say I have nine overall picks, five of them in the top 106. I have picks 4, 38, 69, 77, and 106. With my day two picks, my needs are pass catcher and defensive front, despite signing Milton Williams, Harold Landry, and Robert Spillane in free agency. And those needs, by the way, are why I would take Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. Like depth chart be damned, because I need depth and just star talent at those. So obviously, I would take those guys if they're available, but I've already kind of crossed that possibility off. So at 38, the best value here is probably taking a defensive lineman, even if you would say pass catcher is the bigger need for the team, because I think the depth of the defensive line shallows out. I think there's less of it than wide receiver in this draft. So I'm looking at Darius Alexander, Tyler Williams, JT Tuimoloau, Donovan Ezraku, Nick Scorton, to name a few at pick 38. So I'm looking at defensive tackles and edge rushers. I just need talent on that defensive front still. At 69 and 77, though, I'm looking for a couple pass catchers. Um, if any of the tight ends are left, great. Not the Gunnar Helms and Terrence Ferguson's, but looking at one of those three guys there on day two. If not, there's a group of wide receivers that I like there. I could even reach technically for some that I really like that are kind of going outside the top 100 if I need to. But I think there's plenty of pass catchers I can get there. Late on day three, I'll look at running back. offensive line, defensive back depth. Running back especially is a deep position, and Ramondre Stevenson has had his issues. So I'll look at some of those guys, but looking for offensive line, defensive back depth on day three, because you can never have too much of that. So that's my plan. I'm centering this around Will Campbell. I'm not worried about if he's technically ninth on the board or man, I'm missing out on those blue chippers. That's a bummer. I need a left tackle because didn't do anything about it in free agency. And you know what? That's okay. Will Campbell's going to be a good player, so I'm going to take him at 4.
Phone's ringing.
Hello?
Yeah, this is Braves. Brable.
Oh, hey, man. What's up? How we doing?
Yeah, yeah. Look, listen. Whatever offensive plans you got, throw them out the window. We don't need them. All right. This defense, we're getting there. All right. I appreciate all the money we threw at it in free agency. That was a lot of money. All right. So appreciate that. But I got more players in this draft, so it's defense all the way. Okay. Good talking to you. Bye.
All right. Well, that's a bummer.
Phone's ringing again, by the
Oh no. Okay. Hello.
way. Yeah, Bill Belichick here.
Oh my God. Didn't we get rid of you? What are you? I told you to lose this number. Don't you
Yeah,
have
you
a
did.
study hall to monitor? Get out
Yeah.
of here.
Look, life is great down here in North Carolina. Me and the girl, we're having a great time, and me and the recruits are having a great time. All right, gonna have a good team. All right, but listen, there's this kid Jackson Slater. All right, Sacramento State. Okay, uh, this is the guy. Okay, just want to let you know you're doing a great job. Wish I was there, but didn't work out. But Jackson Slater. All right, gotta go.
The only thing worse than Jackson Slater would have been a wide receiver recommendation. Jackson Slater sounds a whole lot like literally, I mean, literally, there's Cole Strange right there, a Viridian Lowe, a Layden Robinson. Want me to name some more of these guys that are on it? I'm
Uh,
not doing it. There's no
Low
City
is the
Sal.
perfect name, right? Yes, Low is the perfect
He
name.
would he would fit right in.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
done with
there's
my
no chance.
foolishness for a second. Let me start there with the tackle thing because I like that. Now I've heard I even just did a mock draft 2 weeks ago where we did the Patriots and somebody else, one of our panelists, picked Campbell, and I've heard people criticizing that, and I don't really understand that. You can get a little too cute sometimes with some of this, and I don't think this needs to be overthought or too cute here. Like you said, where's he out on the big board is important, right? But man, you got needs, glaring needs here on offensive line. It's thin. And they've tried a little bit to address it, which is fine, but boy, it's thin. So you find the best guy. And listen, if you could trade down, I'm sure everybody would love to. I think out of this first round, there's probably 20 teams that would love to trade down. But
Right.
I don't know that you're going to find offers at that number 4, right? If it's not, if Carter or Hunter isn't sitting there. So I like the Campbell pick. I don't, they've got adults in the room now at the wide receiver group,
Hmm.
so they don't have to draft a wide receiver, but there's guys later in this draft, so they don't have to take Tetaroa, and some people aren't even that high on Tetaroa in the first place, so you don't have to take him. For me, it's offensive line. I think that's where it's at. It's which guy do you like best for the Patriots, and for me, it's Campbell for the Patriots. I like Mimbu better for some other teams, but for the Patriots, I like Campbell. And then you mentioned the wide receiver / tight end. You might be able to do both in this
Yep.
particular draft. If the tight end you love is sitting there in the second round, might be able to grab him. And there's wide receivers there, maybe early third round, perhaps still there. So you may be able to just strengthen the entire offense. It is an interesting question though. Who's making the decisions there? Because I know, my jokes aside, if Vrabel has a huge influence here over roster, he's going to be magnetized on this defense because there's a lot of defensive players in this draft to love.
Hmm.
So I am curious to see over the next couple of off seasons where that influence goes. But I like the plan there.
My guess is Elliot Wolf is in charge of setting the board and like determining where would be good spots to trade if there's guys he's looking to trade up for, doing those, so the true GM scouting part of it, or like if there's a range of guys, or he gives the bucket of guys, right? Like, okay, we like these 3 players that are on the
Okay.
board right here with this pick that's up, and then Vrabel gets to make the final call. That would be my guess.
That would make sense. It's hard to imagine Vrabel heading back to New England and not getting a good bit of influence there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, why you mentioned wide receiver at the top of the third round. I mean, it's a little funky because you get into some of the like speedy, smaller guys, and they obviously have that with Pop
right,
Douglas. But I mean, a
right.
Jack Beck, a Trey Harris, Jalen Royals, Savion Williams. There's options there in the third round. But you get to defensive line, Ben. I just kind of finished up my like day two defensive line catch up, wrap up, go back through, and that drop off from like those borderline first round, those top 40 guys into like the guys that are in the 70s and stuff, there's a bigger drop off, I think, than looking at that same tier at wide receiver. And like you said, they went
Right.
out and got Stephon
Right.
Diggs. Matt Collins, is what he is. But they didn't do, they all they did was Morgan Moses and Garrett Bradbury on the offensive line. Like I think, and I have to assume it's on purpose, right? Like with this
Yeah.
new regime, like we can't assume. They say don't. What's the saying? Don't assume uh questionable actions in the face of stupidity or whatever that is. But like I can't assume that they're not doing a good job, right? Because we just don't know what they're going to be yet. So um I've assumed they were like, four, great, we'll take one of the blue chip guys or we'll take the top left tackle, and that's our left tackle this year.
I'm sure you have. Have you done a stack? Because the Patriots have four good picks 4, 38, 69, 77. Have you done
Yep.
a stack to see what it looks like?
Yeah, for me it would be actually. Oh man, I did one today and I took a picture of it because I knew you were going to ask me that question. It was basically it's not going to come up. It was basically Will Campbell,
Okay.
and then I think I might have gotten Darius Alexander at 38.
Okay.
Um, and then I think I went back to back receivers. I think I did at 70. Oh, you know what it was? I double dipped on the offensive line actually. I
Okay.
got Jonah Savainae from Arizona at like 69 or something like that. And then I
Yes.
went receivers late. I did like Ty Felton and Kyle Williams or something like that. I like
Okay.
Ty Felton, by
Yeah.
the way. But yes, so if it's Will Campbell, Darius Alexander, Jack Beck, and let's say Ty Felton. Let's say we reach a little bit to get another outside guy. Um, I like that for New England.
Yeah, I agree. I like it too because I do feel like I feel like at 38 you can almost do anything you want. There's lots of different directions
Yep.
still there. At 4, I like the offensive line. I like Campbell, and then when you get to 69 and 77, it feels like there should still be interior offensive linemen and wide receivers sitting there at those two spots. I feel like.
Yeah. Now the other option obviously is at four. Let's say you take Ted. We at Box Score Network, we're still high on Ted.
Yeah,
I before free agency was saying they should take Ted because they can
right.
get that dude and then they can cobble together an offensive line that's better than what they have. But again, they didn't go that route. But let's say at four they want to take Ted or Travis Hunter falls to them and they do Travis Hunter.
Right.
They can if a tackle is falling, they could probably take 38 and 69 or 38 and 77 and get back into the 20s. You mentioned a lot of teams probably want to trade back.
Right.
If, let's say they like Josh Simmons, who's probably fallen because of that knee injury. Josh Connerly is a guy I really like, but is continuing to be mocked late in the first round or even early second round. So could if he's fallen, could they trade to 23 and get one of those tackles with those two picks? Sure. They're just
Yes.
so barren on the roster right now. So I think it would have to be if it's a scenario where Shadur goes in the top three and they can get Hunter or Carter, then they
Right.
have to rethink what they do at tackle. I think trading up would be a good option with those extra picks.
I agree. And like, for instance, just throwing out names and numbers, the Commanders at 27 or 28, I'm
Hmm.
sure would love to trade back, get 38 and either 69 or 77. I don't know that there's anybody sitting there at 27 that the Commanders can't do without.
I may or may not have a scenario similar to that lined up for the Commanders later
Okay.
this evening. Look at
All
that.
right.
All right, let's get to your first team in the AFC East. I believe we're going down to Miami.
Yeah. It's crazy down in Miami, and I'm going to add to it. Okay. I'm not going to fix it all tonight. Okay. So just be forewarned here. Uh, let's run through the notes real quick for the Miami Dolphins. A lot of holes. Man, there's a lot of holes. kind of feels it's a kind of a rough roster in some ways. It really is. Um, I'm not sure what the current design build plan is, to be honest. I'm really not. 2 years ago, I felt like I knew. Now I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of feels like a half-built house, to be honest. And the reason I say that is that the front office has been there for so long now. They've moved through a couple of head coaches. They've gotten the quarterback that they wanted. It looked like they had a direction, and now, boy, there's just a lot of holes here. We've seen over the past 2 seasons, Teron Armstead retire, Robert Hunt be let go. We've seen Javon Holland, they let him walk at the safety spot. We've seen them let 2 or 3 other good players just kind of go out the door, and you're like, well, I get that you can't keep all of them, but maybe you would keep a couple of them, I almost want to build on strengths here. There are so many holes. Instead of trying to just patch holes and run around on a leaky ship, I almost just want to focus on a strength, build that, use that as a source of strength for the team, and then continue slowly to build the rest of it. I would love to package some of these 4th and 5th round picks. The Dolphins have a lot of them. They've got a pick at 13, 48, and 98, which is all good. But they've got 2 4s, 2 5s, and 4 7s. And, that's nice. But I would love to package some of that and get back into the top 60. I really would. So some combination of the 4s and the 5s and pick 98. That's where I feel like the real impact stuff is here. I really am looking defensive line in the first round. I've got Chop Robinson on one end, who showed a ton of promise in the second half of last year. Really took a step forward. I've got Seiler in the middle there. I would love to build on that. I would love to make that a strength, and let's just really add to that instead of trying to grab a rookie defensive back, which is fine if they do. But boy, he's kind of going to be on an island out there, to be honest. I'd love for them to just have somebody that they can build together with, and then start to stack the secondary. At picks 98 and 116, this is something we alluded to earlier with the Patriots. I'm starting to look at interior offensive line. Back in those, I still think there's probably a couple of guys I can get even at that late stage. And then again, like we alluded to, we can get more fast wide receivers at 116 and 135. Again, this is the idea of building on strength. So again, I'm not looking for fast wide receivers at pick 13, 48, 98, but back there at the 135 spot and the 116 spot, I can grab another fast guy and really make it even more difficult on these defenses, because now they've got to, it's already difficult, right? But now they've got to continue to stretch this way and stretch that way and watch out for all the jet sweeps. And here's a guy horizontally underneath, and you just got all this speed. There are guys down there, so I would love to grab one of those. Pick 13. I would love to trade from 13 to the early 20s, get an extra maybe mid-second round pick. That would really help, because, again, I'm looking for more impact guys here. So by trading from, say, 98 or 116 up into the top 60, I get another impact guy. And by trading out of 13 to, say, the mid-20s, I feel I can get another impact guy, because dang, I got so many holes. Here's the holes. Safety. Safety is ugly, okay? Cornerback is pretty rough. Offensive tackle is rough. Offensive guard is rough. Defensive tackle, edge. And then other needs that just won't get addressed is running back 2, wide receiver 3, tight end 2. I mean, goodness gracious, it's a lot of holes for a front office that's been there this long. Some of the names I'm looking at here in the first round: Malachi Starks, I would love to add him. Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle, just pair him right alongside Chopper Robinson and Seiler. In the later rounds of Charles Grant, I would love to have him on this offensive line. I think that versatility would be great for the Dolphins. Kyle Williams would be a fast guy I'd be looking at later. And if it landed right, Shamar Stewart at defensive end would be a guy I would love to just add in here, because Chop Robinson has shown he can get home to the quarterback. If Shamar Stewart can't do that, he can at least get the pressure. Now I've got 2 guys who are squeezing, even if it's Chop that's doing the actual get-home stuff. So that's the plan. I will draft any position that's going to make me better. I would love to take those top. I love to take picks 13, 48, 98, and 116 and turn it into maybe 3 or 4 picks between, say, 25 and 60 is what I'd really love to do. hit those impacts. Okay, that's a rough plan. It's not as detailed as some I hand out, but that's it for the Dolphins.
Yeah, the Dolphins are weird, man. It's a moving target, so I get that. All right, let me be definitely don't want to be the owner. I'm good on that. Actually, let me be the
Go ahead,
whatever.
Matt.
Owner's calling.
Yep, GM here.
Um, this is who is this? Stephen Ross. My God.
Yes.
Uh, listen, man, I got a lot of money going to Tua, but I hear that the contract we signed, we can get out pretty soon. I don't care about your draft plan at all. I'm on a yacht.
Okay.
I'm not worried about a draft. I didn't know that was happening. This Zach Wilson guy, I saw he was a second overall pick at one point. That's why we brought him in to be backup. Am I going to get to cut Tua and use Zach Wilson soon, or are you drafting a quarterback with all of these extra picks? You say you have a bunch of picks. You'd love to kind of move around. Is there a quarterback we should be thinking about taking here at some point?
That's a great question. And actually, to me, the answer is yes. When you've got this many picks and guys sitting in here somewhere that look like they could at least have a chance to belong in an NFL field, yeah. Give me Jalen Milrow, give me Jackson Dart, give me Tyler Shugg. I'll tell you, even Will Howard, who I don't think is a future NFL starter, gives you a better chance than some of the backups we've been dragging out there the past two
Hmm.
seasons. Good gosh, he can at least put the ball where it needs to go
Hmm.
and run away a little bit from
Hmm.
from sacks. So we'd at least upgrade our backup spot here. Even over Zach Wilson. So yeah, the answer to that is yes. We would love to do that too.
All right. Hey, it's Mike McDaniel. Got my Miami Vice shirt on, my cool hat. Thanks for not saying you're drafting an offensive lineman. We don't panic over Armstead not being here. I pride myself. I actually have a bet with Shanahan about who can have the least impactfully good
Yes.
um, offensive lineman every year, and who can create something. I know we've been terrible in the winter and bad run game, but it's fine. We're still passing the ball. Just so I know though, so I can watch a little bit of tape. I haven't watched any O-line tape yet. As Mike McDaniel, just so everybody's
Right.
clear.
Right.
Uh, if you were going to take an offensive lineman with, let's say, the first three, but you mentioned Charles Grant. Is there another one? If you were going to swing a little bit higher, let's say, because Grant, I'm looking around. Grant seems like a mid-round pick. If you were going in the first two rounds, take an offensive lineman, who would you like for this team?
The number one fit, and I listen. I go check out the Simon Shortt show, Simon Shortt and Friends show, Simon and Friends show. I think this is where I heard it. If not, it was over on Box Score Network. Both great resources. But Simon suggested for the Dolphins Armand Membu out of Missouri as a first round pick. And I think that's just an absolutely beautiful fit. Listen, this guy can run around all over the football field. So any way you want to run, any direction, sideways, forwards, backwards, up, down, I don't care. He can do it. He'll be doing it as much as your running backs will. The run blocking is great. The athleticism is fantastic, and the measurables and the tape indicate that he would be able to do the pass blocking as well at some point too. So that's my number one guy. Kelvin Banks too. I don't think anywhere near quite the athlete, but still would love him. If you're looking a little farther down, it starts to thin out a little bit on the tackle side of things. But Marcus Bow out of Purdue,
Mm.
not quite the fit, but just a good guy I like. So you're not going to get him to do as much running around. But those are some of the names.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks for telling me that. I'll make sure to put them on the do not fly list down in Miami. We don't need any of that. Give me.
Right.
I like these running backs. Let's
Yes.
see here. Let me tell you a running back that I think can complement Devon Achan and
Please
Jay on the
do.
right.
Yes.
I really like. Can't even pretend to think of one of these guys. I really like that RJ Harvey. I heard he's 5'8", 160 pounds, but fast. So I would
Yes.
like one of those. And then if you could come back around with a Jalen Blue from Texas. I saw he's really fast, and a Bashan Tootin from Virginia Tech. Heard those guys. If you could take those three guys with the first three picks,
Oh, the
um,
first three picks. Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
that would actually be my preference.
And I assume you would love if we just tossed in Luther Burden too on jet sweeps and kick
Yeah,
returns and
yeah.
stuff like that
I
too.
assumed we were trading Tyreek Hill for a top five pick to get do we not think
Okay.
that's a
Yeah,
did I
that's
did I
great.
hit the pen a little too hard? Is that not happening? All right, thanks, man. Yeah, the Dolphins are a mess, man. The Dolphins are a mess. It's not. It's a house of cards. It's a house of
It
cards down there.
it is because I criticized the Dolphins 3 and 4 years ago, right, a lot, and then 2 years ago I saw, well, offensive coach got a quarterback who seems to mesh well with the coach. They've got the speed receivers, they've got the speed running back, and they've got some talent on defense. So okay, I see the direction here. But even that, as you mentioned, has its flaws late in the season and in the cold and against some of the better teams come up, maybe a playoff time, right? So you're kind of capped. But now a lot of that is gone. The offensive line has gotten weaker of the past two off seasons, not stronger. The defense now has holes that didn't have 1 year or 2 years ago. And you're just looking like, well, there was a plan and it's half been torn down. I don't understand where we're going here at all.
Um, yeah. Remember 4 years ago when we did our offensive line crazy YouTube stuff, and we were like, Liam Eichenberg is a real weak link on this offensive line.
Yes.
Liam Eichenberg is
Yes.
still on this offensive line. In
Yeah.
fact, they count on him more than ever. He's playing
But
center. He's playing guard. He's playing both guard. Oh
he'll
my
be playing a
gosh.
lot this year unless they draft a whole bunch of
Oh
offensive
my
linemen.
God. Anyways, all right. That's Miami Dolphins. Sorry, Miami fans. Um, I'm up next. I have the New York Jets. Let's talk about another sad franchise. I just got hired as GM. Let's see. I've got 8 picks. I've got four in the top 110. I've got 742, 73, and 110. A lot of possibilities at seven overall. My preference, we've said his name a lot, is to get Armand Membu to hopefully finalize this offensive line. It's a young group. It's taken some time to build this thing out. John Simpson and Elijah Vera Tucker at guard. You got Joe Tippmann at center. I know you like Olaf Fashanu at left tackle. I would
Yep.
love to get Armand Membu and just finish this thing off. Um, but if let's say he's not there, or some of these really high blue chippers fall, other than running back, no position group is above going with the best player on our board. So if Membu's not there, I am looking at Ted McMillan. I'm looking at the three, blue chippers. That'd be Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. And those are my main positions of need, other than that offensive tackle spot, corner, D line, wide receiver. So if Membu is hopefully the pick at 7, based on where the value is this year in the draft, I like the idea of going corner at 42, defensive line at 73, and then wide receiver at 110. Now, when I did the Patriots, I said I liked defensive line in round 2, wide receiver in round 3. Well, I think corner is even thinner. I like those first 7, 8 names, but I think it
Yes.
thins out pretty quick.
Yes.
Defensive line, I think we're getting a tier or 2 tiers down going to round 3, but I still like who I could get at defensive line there more than corner there. And then wide receiver. I think wide receiver, even though it doesn't have crazy up top star potential, I do think going into round 4 we can get a guy. So I like corner in the second round, D line in the third, receiver in the fourth. I particularly like AZ Thomas, Azariah Thomas out of Florida State at 42. I think he's the best man-to-man corner. You can make the case Trey Amos. I figured out that's the right way to say it. Trey Amos can be that as well. It's just a little bit smaller. So for Aaron Glenn, what he wants to do, be really big, really physical. Azariah Thomas, I think, is the best fit there at 42. A few rotational defensive tackles I like at 73. TJ Sanders, Omar Norman Lott, because of their ability, particularly to play the run. But I could even start looking at edge here. There's plenty of guys at 73, but I like those two guys to be on the interior next to Quinn Williams. And then at 110, I think there's a lot of sleeper receivers that I would even take higher. I mentioned them already. Um, Kyle Williams, Ty Felton specifically, but those guys I'd be looking at 110, hopefully, to kind of get that wide receiver to open things up for Garrett Wilson a little bit. Um, and that's it. It's pretty streamlined for the Jets. I think Aaron Glenn is going to do a lot of heavy lifting to get this defense back on track, but getting another corner would be really big. But Armand Membu to kind of finalize the offensive line and then go with those three positions I mentioned.
I'm not going to do any personalities for the Jets, although there's a bunch. Aaron Rodgers wanted to call in. We told him to take a hike. The owner wanted to call in. We told him to go screw himself. We're good. All right. No calls here for the Jets. It's all business, all focus.
Turn over a new
Aaron,
leaf here.
yeah, Aaron
Getting work
Glenn
on
called
track.
in specifically and said, no foolishness. It's all business. Okay. So,
Love it.
yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, we
Um,
had Aaron on the line. He said, don't even worry about it. Just get through the pod.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. Okay. I have three things that I thought were interesting here. I'll stay on the cornerback spot since you sat there. I love the Thomas fit there to the Jets because I like a guy like that to a lot of places, right? I
Hmm.
mean, he really does. You know, you can use him almost any team, but specifically with the Jets, you like the physicality, you like the one-on-one cover skills being there if you want to, because this defense would love to use that. So I like that. I think that's a great fit. Out of all the people you could have named there, I think I maybe like that one the best in that round at that position. So I all in on that. Love that, especially with Aaron Glenn, your old Jets cover guy sitting back there, so he would recognize that. The question I have is back there. I'm going to get to the Armand Membu thing here in a second, but at wide receiver, say I think you said what back in the early third round, I think
Hmm.
early 100, something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Obviously, they could use another wide receiver, even two, and that's great. So I have no problem with that. My question is, are you looking for a speed guy or a bigger size guy based on what you think might be here in this year's draft?
I would love to get that twitchy speed guy that can both work deep and work underneath to just open up a lot of different combinations for Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
So I
A
like Felton
Savion
and Williams
Williams,
for their
perhaps?
ability to get.
I know he's a little up and down, but
I like Savion. I think he's fun. But if we're trying to button things up in New York, that's a
uh-huh.
2014 Jets pick right there, man. That's a
Okay.
wacky, let's see what happens, and then nothing works out kind of pick.
Okay.
I need solid, gonna play right away. Is maybe a wide receiver 3 or 2.5,
Okay.
but is consistent and can do the things I need to every single down.
Okay. So you really are looking for the consistency there, not necessarily the high end, although if the high end was there, we'd take that too. But okay. The Armand Membo thing.
Hmm.
Tanner Engstrand is coming in as the OC. Do do you envision him being able to use Armand Membo in his offense as what I've so often referred to as the athletic run around everything pass run blocking kind of a guy, or do you envision them using him more as a settle in pass blocking kind of a guy there in New York?
I would like to get Membu out and running and screaming at safeties and corners out on the outside as he runs out of the combine as much as possible early on. I'm
Okay,
going to trust Fashanu's pass blocking a lot on the left side, so I'll give more help to Membu in that regard,
okay,
um, in the pass game. But listen, man, we've got Justin Fields is our quarterback right now. We've got 3 running backs that we want to use by committee. We only have Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. We're gonna
yeah,
run the ball and we're gonna run it behind Membu like crazy. We're gonna get him out on the hoof for sure.
okay. All right. Well, I like the running backs there to do that with, and it really does feel like. And listen, I'm not criticizing Robert Saleh here at all, and I actually liked Douglas as GM before, even though it didn't work out and it was time to move on. It really does feel like Aaron Glenn is there to bring the adultness to what was the crazy.
Mhm.
No matter who you want to blame for the crazy, whether it's the owner, Aaron Rodgers, or just New York Jets in general, right? It almost feels like he's there to just settle everybody down and focus, right? Quit running around laps around the building, right?
Yeah, the what is perceived as, and we don't know what Glenn's like behind the building or anything, but like Sal's like not frantic, like panicky, but just like really energetic, like
Oh
pumped
yeah,
up in your face, like
way up there. Yeah,
ability to be worked up versus Aaron Glenn just like so calm, like in the face of pressure. Like you saw what, like for Robert Saleh to be like his legs at a 45-degree angle or whatever when he had like the best defense in the NFL with the 49ers.
right.
And then Aaron Glenn to just like calmly, not worried about what was happening as his 14th defensive tackle gets carted off the field last year for the Lions. Yeah, it's a little different energy for sure.
All right, I like the Jets plan there. I have no problems with it at all. And I do think they're in a position to draft in a lot of different directions if they want to. So they're not quite as boxed in as it's not like the Dolphins where they have a billion holes everywhere, and it's not like the Patriots where they really kind of feel like they are boxed in a little bit. I think the Jets can go different directions, but I like to play them there.
All right, you are last up with our final AFC East team. You have the Buffalo Bills.
Okay, Buffalo Bills. Let me hit their draft picks first. Here's what they've got: pick 30, second round, pick 56, another second rounder, pick 62. So that is nice. That's some good working capital.
Huge.
That's where I don't mean to ride a horse. I'm a ride a horse. I'm sorry for being obnoxious. To me, that is where you really have draft capital. Okay, you've got a first rounder and two second rounders in a draft where I think even at 62, you're going to have your pick of some very good players. So that's really good. But they've even got two fourth rounders, and they've got three fifths, and
Yep.
they've got a sixth. So good job on them to have a roster this good and still have this many draft picks to work with. So excellent work by Buffalo. Here's some notes. There just aren't many needs or holes on this team. There just aren't. Haven't been for a while. That's the way they do it. And there also aren't very many powerful position groups on this team. You know, you get outside of Josh Allen, it's hard to find a group that can just really assert its will on the football field, right? And that's kind of the trade-off. That's what they've done. They
Hmm.
want to avoid holes. They want to be solid everywhere, a little plus in some spots, but not really dominant hardly anywhere. So, and again, that's fine. They're winning a lot of football games. I will leave them alone with that, okay? They do remind me of vanilla ice cream.
Listen, man,
Other than Josh,
underrated.
yes. All right,
Underrated
listen.
flavor.
It
Let
is
me
an
just say.
underrated flavor, and I like vanilla ice cream.
I
Okay.
ordered a regular vanilla no toppings just a few weeks ago.
Yes, and I was very
Not
happy
even
with
gonna
it.
lie. I had a great
Happy
time.
with it.
The waffle cone got in the way. I wouldn't do the waffle cone again. I do that once. I do that like once a year.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
just when it starts to get warm, you want the waffle cone. But then
Right.
it got in the way. I was fine. But vanilla, great flavor. Do it again. 10 out of 10.
It is. It's a great flavor, but it's also boring. So, and that's everybody. Everybody outside of Josh Allen, right? I mean, that's everybody from the head coach to the way they play normal zone, probably more than anybody else in the league. It's nothing fancy or tricksy. It's just good, straight up, basically zone defense that is sound everywhere. And then even the offense, which I liked last year, was a whole lot better. I thought that had a lot more flavor to it. The offense did, but even the offense isn't like crazy, right? You don't see a lot of the wild innovations that you might see out of San Francisco or Miami or a couple of the other more innovative places. But that's just a note there. I am poised to trade up if we see a guy at 20 to 25 that we like. I think it's important. Even the Bills general manager himself even said at one point, I don't remember when, he said it's hard to find a lot of
Hmm.
greatness back here at the late first round. Well, sometimes it's sitting just a little bit higher within reach,
Yep.
and maybe there's a risk attached. But if you're Buffalo, you can afford to handle that risk. So whatever player it is that they're looking at as being a difference maker, I'll list a few here in a second. But if they've got that high ceiling, and maybe for whatever reason teams are picking somebody else, and that guy's sitting there at 20 to 25, I think it's well worth it to trade up and get that guy. I'm also poised to trade out um, out of the first round, but I'd really only like to add 2026 draft picks because we already have so many this year. Um, I don't know. I'll put it this way: getting a pick at say pick 40, 56, and 62. I don't know how much that does for us winning this year, right?
Hmm.
So I'd love to just grab two guys in that range. If we're not going to get a difference maker in the first round, grab two guys somewhere in that range, and then have another pick waiting for us next year, either in the late first or early second, when maybe we have another hole that's more obvious, or maybe it's a little bit richer draft, or we now
Right.
have a financial issue that we're up against. Okay.
Hmm.
So That's dealing off of the strength of how many picks we have this year. Um, we're glad to take one trick ponies. This is the advantage of having a roster this good. If you got a guy who's only good at edge rushing, he's not going to hold up against the run. We can take him. All right,
Hmm.
we can use that. All right, if we've got a guy who's really only good at if we've got a running back, for instance, it's only good at one thing, we can afford to take that. All right, that's
Right.
not a problem. We don't necessarily need well-rounded guys. As we talked about several times, the cover guys might be gone by picks 56 and 62. So if we want to cover guy, and we do, we might need to grab one with that first round pick because I just don't think at 56 and 62 they're going to be sitting there any longer. So if we really feel like we need to get a cover guy in here, and I think we do, then that really needs to be the first round pick. At 56 and 62, I'm starting to look at interior offensive line and safety. I think there's legit guys at both positions would really help us out because we're not strong at either of those groups. We're not hurting necessarily, but we're not
Right.
strong either. So I would love that. And then with rounds 4 through 7, we're just going to try to add some competition at wide receiver, edge, and safety. Here's my perception of their needs. Cornerback is number one need. To me, safety is the number two need, but only if we can get a difference maker. We don't need just another regular guy, somebody
Hmm.
whose ceiling looks very high. Um, 3 would be linebacker. And then if I could get a difference maker at, say, wide receiver or defensive line or interior offensive line, somebody with a high ceiling, even if there's some risk attached, I would love that. Here's some of the prospects. Jahdae Barron, I think, would be good for us. Maxwell Hairston, I think, would be very good for us. Both guys look like they can perform a specific role. Kind of get sticky there. The guy I got in mind maybe to trade up for 20 to 25 would be like a Dick Emanwari. This would be a guy who on the back end of that defense could really add some talent. Now, he doesn't necessarily fit what Buffalo does. Okay. He's not a guy who just sits back there and plays free safety all the time. So we'd have to be willing, if he's going to be on the team and on the field, to utilize him more in the box and bend our defense a little bit more. So if they don't like that in the defensive room, then we don't draft him. But from a talent standpoint, he boosts that. Kevin Winston, though, is a guy sitting back there in the late second, early third rounds, maybe at pick 62 from Penn
Hmm.
State. He's a guy who's got a high ceiling. Coming off of an injury, he's been buried on draft boards right around pick 90 for a whole bunch of weeks here. But you talk about a guy that's got a big ceiling and actually would fit what Buffalo does, he does. So that's a name there. Um, Malachi Starks is going to be long gone, but that would be a great fit. And then Darius Alexander, defensive tackle, is a guy I think would be very well served. I mentioned one trick ponies. I'm not going to say that Darius Alexander can't be a 3-down player, but when I watched him, his best feature was just get after the quarterback, just
Yep.
split, move, push, shove, run everywhere, just get after the quarterback. In fact, he did it so much at Toledo, he got tired in a lot of games. He's kind of huffing and puffing because he's running around more than your average
Yep.
defensive tackle.
Hmm.
But he's not necessarily a run stopper. He's really not. And he's not necessarily a gap filler or he's not that. But you talk about get after the quarterback, and I mentioned the one trick ponies.
Yep.
If
Hmm.
Darius Alexander, and maybe he grows into a bigger role, but Buffalo could handle a guy like that. They've got plenty of well-rounded guys. They could use a guy who on third down, you just throw him in there and he gets after the quarterback. So that's it. That's some of what we're doing. We got a good roster here. I mean, we got a tremendous roster. We know we're going to be good. It really is for me about if we can't I want to upgrade somewhere. I don't want to just keep adding bodies. I would love to find the difference maker, upgrade somewhere here.
Let's see. All right. Sean McDermott's on the phone.
Uh, what's up, Sean?
Hey, let's see. I need your splashiest pick on defense in the first round. We got it. We have a good defense. The chemistry of those young guys really came together last year. The DBs especially played above their head. But you talked about maybe packaging something up and going up. If you were gonna get into the top 20, let's say we work this out, we get into the top 20 for a splash day one, going to make plays in playoff games, but also be a down to down starter that I can rely on, who is that guy for this team?
Great question. I'm looking at guys that might be sitting, say, 15 to 20. I John A. Barron would be a guy that I just don't think is going to be there at our pick. So that would be one. That's a splashy guy because, again, flexible, probably going to end up being a slot guy. So he may drop to us, but I kind of doubt it. Can move him to the outside. He loves to get after it on the run game as well. So that I like that. Jamar Stewart coming in on defense like this, I think would be a big splash for Buffalo. They're not usually going to get guys like Shamar sitting back where they usually draft. Adding to Michael Williams, I mentioned guys with high risk. Michael Williams may not ever develop into anything, but Buffalo could sure use him. So
Hmm.
he's not. I don't think Michael Williams will be sitting there back at 30, 31, wherever Buffalo's at. But trade up to 20 and catch Michael Williams. Those would be some of the names right there that splash wise I think would do the most.
Yeah, I like and that was my main thing for Buffalo. Splash on defense because this team was 18th in sacks last year.
Yeah,
Let's see how'd they do at pressure rate. 12th in pressure rate. They weren't too bad. Um, 8th in total pressures. It just feels like you get to the play, and I mean, this is what happens when you're picking down here. When you're this good of a team, you get measured on those last couple games, and
right,
they just need like they're a defense that whether it was because their old unit was aging out or this new unit is coming up, it feels like they're always just keeping up, just getting
right.
by, and it feels like they need a star. It feels like they need a star, and Greg Rousseau had 8 sacks last year. He had a really good start to the year. I think
Yeah,
edge rusher would be the thing for me, but like you said, like you Williams and Stewart are kind of developmental guys, and Rousseau is a developmental guy. So you're signing up to do that again. I like the idea of the DB. I think they could get Malachi Starks. I know we're really high on him, but there's a chance he's there and they can put him at safety and
yeah,
then
yeah.
he can be the heir to Teron Johnson as a slot. Or they could even swap spots if you want Johnson to kind of be your full-time strong safety. Just play him in the box and let Starks cover as the nickel. I like that. Which I guess you could do with Barron because my
Yeah,
fear, not fear with Barron. I think Barron's gonna be a good player, but I think he's slot only. I don't like him as much on the outside. Now maybe for McDermott and the Bills it would work out
right.
because the McDermott turned Benford into a guy they gave a big contract to. Dane Jackson comes back from Carolina, so
Hmm.
there's something there in terms of McDermott getting his guy. So maybe he could make Barron that guy. But if you go with one of those slot types and you move Johnson to more of a full time in the box role, there's something. I really like the Darius Alexander pick because that's like a big Ed Oliver in terms of the one
Right,
gap penetrating pass
right.
rushing guy. You can give Oliver a little bit of a break. Um, you said vanilla and I'm feeling that as I try to come up as I'm thinking about it, like it's just like they like I would almost want to trade all these picks and get into the top 15 and just say
Right.
like here's Jalen Walker. Like, we had a
Yes.
conversation about Jalen Walker, before we start recording, but like frenetic energy, a bundle of talent, high floor. Throw him in this defense and do something wherever you want to put him.
Right.
Um, I do have two things. I'm really glad you mentioned offensive line. They were one of the best offensive lines in the league last year, but they've been one of the healthiest for the last 2 seasons. And
Yeah.
they had less depth last year than 2 years ago because Mitch Morse went to Jacksonville.
Hmm.
So David Edwards became a starter. He's good, but he was kind of their best backup 2 years ago. And now it's like, I think Ryan Van Denmark was doing their six offensive lineman stuff, but they don't really have a good depth. So I would love for them to have some depth because this will be the year, right? Everybody gets hurt and they're playing Cedric Van Pran Granger and Denmark both start. Kendrick Green is starting somehow, and you're just in
Right.
total hell. So I'm glad you mentioned them. My one big question for you: what's happening with James Cook? Put his house up for sale. He wants 15 mil a year, whatever it is. Do we get to pick 20? Let's say we don't make a trade up. Let's say we don't. We're sitting there at 30. Do we have to take Amari and Hampton if he's there?
Yeah, I would if we ended up having to trade James Cook, which I obviously don't want to do, but we used him a lot last year. Goodness gracious, boy, we
Hmm.
just kind of he was a staple. So we don't want to do that. But if we got to trade him, we've even got more draft capital now, and yeah, we'll take a Marion Hampton there at the late first round if he's there. Absolutely,
Yeah, could you get a third for Cook and fill that gap there between 62 and one? And I know you just
that's
said
the
like,
question,
what's another
right?
day two
Yeah,
pick going to do for you? But
right,
then if you use one of those second, let's say Hampton's even gone at 30. A lot of people really like Hampton. Let's say
right.
Hampton's gone at 30. You still take a defensive player at 30. You take a running back on day two. You take an offensive lineman with one of those day two picks, and you still have one more day two pick to do
Yeah,
something else, a defensive lineman, something. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Because that would be fun. I mean, losing James Cook would be a bummer, so you're not really netting anything out. But in terms of doing something exciting, um, getting Hampton
My
at 30 would be fun.
my favorite was the Darius Alexander pick.
Yeah, I
But
like that
what I
one a
kept
lot.
running into with this draft and this roster in particular was you either go up to get the truly special ish kind of a player who maybe doesn't have the production, but you just love all the traits, right?
Hmm.
Or boy, you're kind of now picking guys who do one thing. And I kind of avoided some of the edge rushers specifically because I know you don't like a couple of them. But if you're looking at guys to only get to the quarterback off the edge, you're looking at a Mike Green, a Donovan Ezeraku, or a James
Mark
Pierce,
Pierce.
right? Because
Hmm.
guys who could just flat out get after it,
Yep.
even if they don't do anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then you're looking at defense tackle, and you're talking about is what like Walter Nolan stock is going up and down. That would be fun. He's a true
Yeah,
like Ed Oliver, kind of parallel.
yeah,
Um, but then you're looking at more run stoppers after Derek Carmen, Tyke Williams.
you are.
But Alexander
Yeah.
would be a pass rusher, and he's big enough. I mean, he could, I'm sure they could coach him up. But all right, that was a good one. That is the AFC East. So before we do anything else here, I want to tell everybody about some other pods that we have going on Box Score Network. So obviously, I mentioned the YouTube channel. There's a mock draft up there. Check that out. But on the podcasting side, check out the Tricky Takes podcast this week. Baseball season is here, and even though we're just 10 games in the season, the Tricky Takes crew is projecting the All-Star game lineups based on what they've seen so far. Check it out now on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. That's Tricky with two I's, Triicky, Takes a Box Score Network podcast. That will be up in your feed later this week. So check out Tricky Takes and check out all the pods at Box Score Network. If you are listening on the audio version, we're going to roll right into the NFC East. If you're watching on YouTube, that'll be the end of this video. So thank you so much for watching. And make sure you are back, like I said, 24 hours. The NFC East will be up on YouTube then. In the meantime, while you wait, go check out the mock draft. But thank you so much for YouTube watchers. We will talk to you soon. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Have a good one.